All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Leadership Development as a Chancellor's Research Fellow panel. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. To kick off our panel, we will begin with introductions. So I ask that all Chancellor's Research Fellows share your name, year, major, and your brief research pitch, if you would, please.
So I could begin. Hi, everyone. My name is Yuritsa. I'm a fourth year psychology major with a minor in neuroscience. And my research focus is looking at the effectiveness of mindfulness practices on the well-being of college students. And I particularly am interested in knowing whether mindfulness practices are more effective in people that are high on openness versus being low on openness.
Good evening. My name is Greg Sanchez. I am a fourth year history major, and my research resides in the Inland Empire, where I offer a retelling of the Latinx history of the IE. I sort of, unpack and demystify the Latinx experience in the Inland Empire by removing the rosy story of the citrus Anglo fantasy past and replace it with the labor by minority groups in the region.
And hi, y'all. My name is Myra Gomez-Zabrada, pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm currently a fourth year double majoring in theater and education. And my project is titled How Are Achievement Gaps Connected to Performing Arts Programs, how are achievement gaps connected to access to performing arts programs in Central Valley high schools? So with this project, I'll be going back to my hometown up in the Central Valley up north and kind of seeing how different high schools' access to their performing arts programs comes to affect the students in their population.
My name's Kelsey Rosales. I'm a fourth year neuroscience major, and my research focuses on how pup cues have genetic effects on the biparental California mouse. And see, chat messages. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with our first question, which is for Greg and Yuritsa. The question is, how has the CRF allowed you to be more involved in your research?
Yeah, I'll go first. So, this experience has really pushed me into the realm of communicating with professionals in their field, right? So now I have more of a reason to contact professors, not only within UC Riverside, but also professors at other major research institutions. And so in that, I've been connected with people in archives, within the communities. I've been afforded the opportunity to, connect with leaders of community groups and such, because what I do is oral histories. And so in that, I interview people. And so by doing so, I am, connected with various people within the region. And as we all know, part of the game is connecting with and building your network and thus becoming more successful. So with the actual research side of things, it's just been multi-pronged in my success as a researcher.
And for me, so being a part of the Chancellor Research Fellowship has just overall opened up opportunities that I would not have had access to otherwise, while having a supportive community behind my research. So my research involves me creating a study essentially from, everybody is able to do a study from start to finish, but for mine, it involves creating a task that is carried out online. And then through this task, I collect responses. And so it's giving me the opportunity to be able to work with online platforms, to be able to create those surveys for college students to be able to complete. And then as well as, because my research is being conducted on humans, I have had to go through the process of getting approval from the Institutional Review Board. And so I have been able to get a more insightful look into what it is like to run research from beginning to end, from creating the idea through actually having it carried out. And with being within the, and also getting that insight to what it's like to conduct this research within the psychology field, since many psychology experiments do work with humans. So I've been able to get this other perspective by being a part of the Chancellor Research Fellowship.
You both so much for your responses. Our next question is for Myra and Greg. The question is, how has being a CRF allowed you to build your relationship with your faculty mentor?
Awesome. That's a really good question. I will go ahead and say that this experience kind of being in this fellowship is definitely, like, I think I had a really good relationship with my faculty mentor ahead of time. She was like my club organizer, like faculty advisor. But then once I reached out about this project, I think she not only was like very open to helping me on this project, but I think she saw this as an opportunity for me to kind of continue my journey as a scholar. And I think she definitely kind of kept this in my mind of like, hey, like you're doing a really great job with this research project. And I think this will be really beneficial for you on your graduate applications. And I think you should publish this. So I think kind of having that relationship has definitely heightened the stakes of everything in a certain way. And along with that, I think really working closely with her has also allowed her to see my work ethic in a different way, like in a way that normally wouldn't be seen in a classroom. And I think a lot of that has translated onto like my letters of recommendation. Like I applied to grad school in December. So she was definitely able to kind of write on that and see all the independent work that I've done for this research fellowship.
Yeah, I love this question. I'm sort of just going to ride the coattails of Myra, laid out. It's just that the process of, in communication with my faculty mentor, the process of networking is really just slowed down, right? So like during a quarter, you have a limited amount of time to build a relationship with a professor, but in having a full year to sort of meet, routinely, and you and your faculty mentor will set up that sort of schedule. The process just slows down. You get to connect on a more personal level. So as Myra was saying, is that the professor learns like the way that you go about your process of conducting research. But not only that, you ask about, how's everything going in your life? What's happening? So you really build that continuity between and that pipeline between you and your professor, so that when they are writing that letter of recommendation, they know fully who you are. But then our professors, they have studied at different universities. My professor, Dr. Dukowski, she knows a lot of people at Berkeley. She knows a lot of people at Yale. She knows a lot of people in the history world. And, she's introduced me to, or point me in the direction, or written an email that has sort of connected me with other professionals in the field. And that is just something that doesn't really is common inside of, just meeting during office hours. So it really allows you to expand your relationship with your faculty mentor, this process of being a CRF.
Definitely agree. Thank you both so much. The next question is for Myra and Yuritsa. What skills have you had the opportunity to further develop as a CRF?
So being a Chancellor Research Fellow has really given me the opportunity to expand on a whole variety of skills, really, just with all of the opportunities that being in this fellowship opens up. A couple of the ones that I want to highlight, though, is communication skills, just because through being a Chancellor Research Fellow, I've also gotten more opportunities to be able to speak publicly, like such as on this panel. And recently we did interviews. So I'm having more opportunities to need to speak publicly and be able to articulate, especially what I'm researching about. And then in addition, being able to communicate to my faculty mentor, who is like how my research is going, setting goals with them, ensuring that everything is done in a timely manner. So communicating also with my faculty mentor to be sure that my study is on track. If I run into any problems, I've really had to learn how to not be afraid to kind of seek that help and ask for help, especially since there's a lot of roadblocks that you run into as you're conducting research, and as well as communicating with just student engagement overall, letting them know how my project is going. So there's a lot of communication involved through being a Chancellor Research Fellow. And in addition to that, my skills have also improved with being able to put together these tasks that I'm creating for my research project. So for example, Qualtrics is one website that I work with very often. And before this opportunity, I was not very familiar with Qualtrics. I only knew that it existed, but I didn't really know how it worked. So through being a research fellow, I've really had to kind of figure out how to work with this website to make my study come to life, as well as figure out ways to be able to figure out the problems. So like sometimes, so it involves a lot of Googling, really having to figure out like, how can I do this in Qualtrics? How can I do that? And I think it's a really valuable skill to be able to know how to how to work through those struggles, how to be able to figure out those questions that they're introductory questions, but they're so important in being able to build these set of skills to continue conducting research in the future.
Yeah, I guess to answer this question, I'd want to highlight two things. I think the first one would be completing the IRB. Much like Greg, I also have to interview people. And I think in my realm specifically, my main major is theater. And we have very limited kind of research opportunities in that department. And it was wild because I was applying to like PhD programs and everybody was kind of expecting me to do research by the time I was submitting applications. So I think getting the opportunity to do the IRB form and kind of that really long, intensive process is a skill to develop in itself. And I know that if I continue doing this in grad school, I'll also have to continue doing that there. But I think another skill that I kind of got the opportunity to develop here is speaking to professionals. It was very terrifying contacting like, what's it called, like superintendents for my past school district. And I actually went on a Zoom call with them, and it was terrifying having to like be like, hello, I'm an undergraduate from UCR. I used to go here. So as terrifying as that was, I think I got kind of a boost of confidence. And you very rarely get the opportunity to speak to professionals that were maybe that close to you in the past. So that's something that I'm really thankful for.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for sharing. Definitely agree with that as well. This next question is for everyone on the panel. The question is, what committee do you serve on? And if you could explain a little bit about your committee, that would be appreciated. And what has been your experience thus far?
Yeah, I'll take the lead on this one. So I serve on the mentorship committee. And so what we do is we facilitate and organize, sort of success workshops for people. And that takes a look of various forms. For instance, we'll do a workshop on email etiquette, right? I think that's something that is often overlooked, and I think it's something that many students would benefit from, attending one of these workshops. I receive emails from students, as a president of an organization on campus, and I see some of the flaws that go on within the writing of an email experience. Another workshop that we do is, developing relationships with professors, like the nuts and bolts of how to do that, and then earning letters of recommendation. Right. So these are all sort of success type workshops that we want to that are sort of like the supportive side of the house when it comes to the CRF. And, there's a saying that if you want to be an expert in anything, teach it. Right. And so the more that we're exposed to this sort of, I guess, instruction or being tasked with instructing people on how to's, we learn and we unpack the benefits and the actual nuts and bolts, I guess, of doing it all.
I can go next. So I serve on the outreach committee. And so what the outreach committee is involved in is more of the background that goes behind creating the application for the next year's CRF and kind of figuring out how the application process is going to go moving forward, kind of how we get to have our input on what we thought of the past application and adjusting it for future ones, as well as creating the workshops for future Chancellor Research Fellows. So we work on putting together that presentation that the applicants have to attend that outlines essentially the application for being able to be a Chancellor Research Fellow, as well as to ensure that the students and any applicants are clear about what that application entails, and also clarifying anything that they might be confused about. And those, as well as brainstorming with the group, with the rest of the outreach committee of how Chancellor Research Fellowship could continue to be advertised on a bigger scale. So the goal with this fellowship is for it to reach as wide an audience as possible so that we can get as many applicants all across all majors. So that's one thing as well that is done within the outreach committee.
I'll go ahead and share that I'm also on the outreach committee with Iritza and Kelsey. But yeah, I think it's, I second everything that you just said, but I'll go ahead and add that I think we also, my experience has been kind of exposure to getting to do other things as well, and even independent work to a certain extent. For example, Gladys, who's kind of queen of CRF, she kind of asked the group like, hey, would anybody like to host a panel? And Kelsey and I were kind of like, hey, like we'll do it. So Kelsey and I kind of got the opportunity to work alongside each other, kind of meeting on a weekly basis and putting this panel together and reaching out to all the CRFs to see who would like to join. So yeah, getting to do independent work that also includes like making a social media post and sharing it with Gladys, kind of touching base with Gladys. And again, continuing those relationships that you have with everybody here at CRF.
You all, and there are a few other panels, a few other committees that there are no representatives for today, but this is all also part of being a Chancellor's Research Fellow, is serving on a committee and really supporting one of the kind of missions or goals of the CRF as a whole. So if you're interested in becoming a CRF, you would definitely look into that and get more exposure with some area of assisting the CRF in moving forward. All right, so moving to the next question. The next question is for Myra and Greg. The question is, how have CRF meetings, such as meeting Chancellor Wilcox and or CNAS and CHAS deans, been valuable to you?
I guess I'll go first. Yeah, so this is a terrific question. I actually had the opportunity to facilitate the meeting with Chancellor Wilcox, and when we get the chance as a cohort to meet in a real small, more intimate type of setting, albeit it was through Zoom, some of these leaders on campus, some of these executives, you really get the opportunity to showcase who you are, present yourself, make your presence known, right? And in doing that, there's like, even though we don't see, say, for instance, the chancellor every day, there have been times where I've walked on campus and he's kind of called me from a distance, like, hey, Greg, come over here, and that's happened a couple of times where, I've seen him, I'm a veteran, so I see him, at veterans events. I'm also, like I said, the president of another organization. So when we see each other, there's that sense of, community about being accepted into this UCR sort of system. And with that, you start connecting with people and networking, and the doors are opening. We've had the opportunity to meet with like the CHAS dean and CNAS deans. I wasn't able to be at those meetings, but certainly, just by being a part of the CRF, we're an email away from like, hey, can you introduce me to, Vice Chancellor so-and-so? And it's like, okay, awesome. And, with student affairs, Dr. Geez, the name just slipped my mind. My goodness. I better not tell her that I forgot her name. But anyhow, we get the opportunity to meet some really lovely people and to kind of learn from them on how they become leaders and become, find their way into the positions that they have. Because if we listen objectively, we have the opportunity to learn from some of the best in the business.
Yeah, I think to echo what Greg said, I think a lot of it is about networking. And I like to tell people, like, you're never going to get the opportunity to make connections unless you're in the room with those connections. So I really appreciate having these intimate meetings like Greg mentioned. And just, again, letting your presence be known and really putting yourself out there. And I think these are really special opportunities to ask those questions that you've always wanted to ask. For example, for most of these sessions, we'll have Q&A sections, and even ahead of time, CRFs will be able to submit their questions like using a Google Doc. So you're very certainly going to get your question answered. And yeah, it's just like a really great room with opportunities. And again, just copying what Greg said, you are basically an email away from getting another connection. So it's really great that we are kind of able to communicate on such kind of like a smaller scale with these people that you wouldn't just normally ask Chancellor Wilcox, like, hey, what are you thinking about the remote situation as you're like walking to Starbucks or something. But I think kind of having these different scenarios, these intimate Zoom calls, you are able to kind of go more in depth and really get an in-depth answer, something more than just surface level.
Definitely. Thank you both. Our next question is for Yuritsa and Greg. The question is, what has been your most memorable experience as a CRF thus far?
I can go. So far, I would like to highlight two things. So for my research, my experience through conducting my research I've learned that research is basically one challenge after another. Like, you get one thing figured out, and then here comes a whole other set of challenges really to get through. So it's a whole learning experience, but some of the most memorable experiences was one for me. I also had to fill out the IRB application, and that was an experience in itself because the application forces you to consider things about your research that maybe you had not considered before. The first time around, I did go through and essentially asks a lot of questions about your research, how it's going to be carried out, why you want to conduct your research, and all the little details. Why is the main question that is being asked. And so when I was initially filling it out, I think that I'm covering all of the points, and then they get back to me with edits about multiple areas that I had not even considered. And so just going through that whole application process in itself, it was a very memorable experience. And then the second was seeing my task do exactly what I had planned for it to do. So this, just going back in time, like, I had applied to be a Chancellor Research Fellow a year ago today. This was essentially, as an applicant, it was essentially just an idea. So going from just an idea to something that I'm able to do in real life was a big step. And then seeing the task turn out to what I expected it to be. And then also creating this task was a large learning experience for me. As I had mentioned, it was done through Qualtrics, but essentially my tasks has people participate in mindfulness practices. And I was able to find a way for them to be able to do, I don't know if I should say too much about my study, but while they're doing the task, they're able to see this mindfulness task and engage with it. And initially, I wasn't sure how this was gonna turn out, but seeing when I was actually finally able to figure it out, see it come together, be able to test this task and take it even myself, that was such a gratifying experience for me and made me so excited to see this study be carried out and to start seeing how people respond to this task. And so that was a very memorable moment for me.
Yeah. Look, this CRF is a prestigious sort of opportunity, fellowship for a reason. I mean, for me, the most memorable experience is straight out the networking, the community that I've come into contact with. Quite honestly, from librarians and archivists to the faculty in the history department, and hear of me being a CRF, and they're just like so fully supportive of it. Connecting me with this person and that person, and even the people outside of my department on campus. Truly, in the professional world, I'm a non-traditional student. I'll be 40 this year. I have experience in the professional world, and it really is about networking and creating, a network of people to sort of lean off of. And when it comes from a genuine place, and you're serious about being serious in this endeavor of academia, and then this carries over to your professional life. So quite honestly, it's been the networking that has been the most memorable experience. But in addition to that, in my field of study in history, the non-science majors, we don't get a whole lot of opportunity to do undergraduate research. And so when you're when you're looking to apply for grad schools, and you can come with this and say, hey, UC Riverside invested money into me, like I'm worthy. And that validates your existence and your application for grad schools. Like UCR gave us, provided us $5,750 as undergraduates to do research, and you put that on your CV and your resume, and you actually put that total next to your name in conjunction with any other scholarships that you might have received. And it starts to, separate you from the pack, to be quite honest with you. So, I mean, I see this as a, not only an experience to gain research experience, but also to catapult me to the next phase of my academic career.
Definitely. Thank you so much. The last question for the panelists is, how does your research relate to your future goals and ambitions? And this question is for Myra and Yuritsa.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start this one off. I think my project heavily relates to my future goals and ambitions. So again, to reiterate, my project is going to be kind of analyzing how access to performing arts comes to affect the students at different high schools. So for example, a school in a really wealthy neighborhood will have different access to performing arts than one in a low income area, for example. So I think a lot of the things that I'm focusing on, and I think that I found throughout my college career, is that I really want to focus on creating equity in the spaces that I encounter. That being said, I also want to be a community college professor teaching theater. So again, kind of going with creating equity and kind of giving transfer students kind of an opportunity to gain knowledge kind of in the world of theater. So again, kind of creating equity overall. And I think getting to go back to my hometown where it all started, where my drama kind of adventure started. I think it's really like close to home. So I'm very excited to go back and interview all those people. But along with that, I think it's really great that I'm able to kind of go back to my school district and say, hey, look at how much the performing arts helps these students. And you really need to like cut down on the budget cuts. And I think that this research really has the power to create equity in the world of performing arts for generations to come. And I hope it does.
So for me, I do kind of want to go over a little bit re-say what Greg said a little bit, how not only does this opportunity provide me a chance to conduct research, but also as an opportunity to catapult me into my next phase of life. I really like how you said that, by the way, very well said. I would like to agree with that. So my research, it relates to my future goals and ambitions because I do plan to attend to graduate school. I plan to go straight to a PhD program, hopefully, which is all research based. So I'm hoping that this experience already conducting research is what allows me that space to be able to get accepted into one of these programs, as well as what I want to conduct research within once being in these programs. I'm somebody who generally is, or okay, so I'm somebody that's generally passionate about mental health being a topic and am very curious about what mechanisms are effective in caring for people's day-to-day well-being and caring for everyone's mental health. So that's where the inspiration for my project, which is again observing the effectiveness of mindfulness practices on college students. That's where that inspiration came from. So mindfulness is a topic that has gained popularity recently, and it leads me to wonder, like, how effective is this thing that is being mentioned so much across mental health platforms? And that is something that I want to continue researching within my PhD program. Whether it's necessarily specifically mindfulness, I am not certain about that yet, but just overall, just well-being exercises that people could implement to their daily lives, whether this be also like the power of introspection, emotional regulation, just what strategies are actually can scientifically be proven and shown evidence that they are effective in helping a person feel better in their day-to-day. And so that's what I would like to dedicate my next phase of my life with. And then after I get my PhD, I would like to find a way to apply my findings. So the policy world is something that has caught my attention recently, that maybe after doing this research, I can go to work with public officials and having them and showing them that this is what I found, these are strategies that work, and kind of showing them areas where these things can be implemented to really further the progression of the mental health field. It's already starting to get attention, and it's good that people are already speaking about this, but it would be great to see these changes happen in the policy world. Hopefully, we'll see. It's a long path till then, but those are my.
Thank you. Thank you to all the panelists for joining us and being willing to share your advice and your experience with all of the participants who are joining us here today. I would now like to offer space for participants to ask any questions. If you would like to direct a question to a specific panelist, please feel free to do so. And feel free to either input your questions in the chat or unmute yourself and ask your questions verbally. So this is an open time for anyone who's interested to ask any questions of the panelists. If you have a question about the CRF or someone's specific experience, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So I noticed I did come a little late, so I apologize, and I didn't get to see the introductions, but I'm a student who's not a part of any of the so like I guess the question is like, and I'm from CHAS, so it's kind of new to me. How did you like end up finding those areas of research? Like, did you get those before you joined, or did you get them like afterwards?
I'll go ahead and start. Greg, you can add to this. I'm sure you will add to this afterwards, but I'll go ahead and share. I'm actually majoring in theater and education. And in the theater world, there's very limited opportunities for research in our department. And I think Well, first of all, my faculty advisor reached out to me and shared this opportunity with me. And I kind of saw it as an opportunity to make an original research project on any topic that I wanted to explore. So I kind of took that and I ran with it. And I was thinking, what could I possibly kind of use to connect both my majors, theater and education? And I honestly like just look back to see it like one of my hometown problems, where back home, the Central Valley High School the Central Valley city that I'm going to be examining in my project is Modesto, California. That's my hometown. And wealth disparity is super prevalent there. I personally went to the low income high school, and it was always like a talking point during my drama class, how like our school had super limited funding. And like we didn't even have a stage to perform on, compared to like different high schools that had these like whole academies for them to work with. So I kind of just like thought of something that really hit close to home. And I thought it'd be an awesome opportunity to go and actually examine how these differences in performing arts access comes to affect the students. Because I myself was one. And I'm sure if I would have gone to a different high school with more opportunities, I would have been way better off, and potentially even had gone to a different school or maybe like to another like country to explore theater. But yeah, I unfortunately didn't get those opportunities, but I'm really glad that now I get to really go back and examine all of those differences.
Yeah, I'll add just a little bit to this. So I came into CRF by chance. Like I didn't see any advertising or anything. I'm a transfer student, and I started during the winter quarter of last year, so 2021. And so that was January. And I was in a class with a professor who is now my faculty mentor. And she had said, hey, there's this opportunity for CRF. If you're interested, it's to get undergraduate research experience. And if you want to do it, then I will fully support you and we'll figure out how to go about it. So it started with my topic. It just basically started like, what's important? Like, what is a question that's on my mind? And what is my interest? Like, what am I really interested in sort of unpacking? And because this is really a time to shine and investigate and interrogate something that's important to you personally. Like nothing is assigned to you from a professor. It's not a class that you take, right? And so my suggestion would be to, if you haven't, if you already have a professor in mind that could possibly be your mentor, terrific, because this looks good for them too. Okay, so and all this stuff. Like I took this graduate student or this undergraduate student who got accepted to Yale because this person like did this phenomenal research as an undergrad, right? So, if you already have a professor in mind, terrific. If not, then go to the faculty webpage of any discipline, if you're whatever your major is, and read their biographies. Look at what their research is in. And so then you can find out like, oh, that sounds like really interesting. And then you sort of try to reach out to them. This is why you want to get started on this entire process now, because the applications aren't due for some time still. So there is time. And you can work to create with the professor this research proposal that you're considering putting together. So that would be my suggestion, as far as like finding your way in. Pick something that's very important to you, that you want to investigate further, something that you might be passionate about, and then just start narrowing down what professor you'd like to ask to be your mentor.
If I could just add one last thing, Greg, you reminded me of it. Definitely pick something that you're not going to get tired of. I think similar to a PhD program, you're going to be working on this for quite some time. So it's a year-long project, and really like what's a topic, what's a question that you're going to want to answer so passionately that you're going to want to work on this all year long. But yeah, again, second everything that Greg said.
Yeah, and to add on to that really quick, it's that passion that you have for that question that ultimately gets you through the road bumps and like the challenges, because like research is difficult and it's a whole learning process. There's going to be things unexpected, obstacles that you'll run into, and overall it's this question that's going to keep motivating you through to continue to finding the solution to that problem and continue conducting that research. So yes, it's very important.
Thank you all. I would like to ask Alina. If you would like to share your question, please do so.
Yeah, I had like a few questions, but I'll just do one and then Yanina can go next. The first question was that I looked at the site and it said that the CRF info session was mandatory, but then I wasn't able to attend those. Is there a specific person I should contact? Because I did contact undergraduate research, the email for there, and also student engagement. They haven't gotten back to me. Is there like the coordinator?
Yeah, I think
Oh.
the best person to contact would be Gladys. I'll go
Oh.
ahead and put her contact information in the chat, her contact email. If you'll just give me 2 seconds, I'll go ahead and do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Why you do that, Alina? Yeah, Gladys Herrera Berkowitz, she's like, as was mentioned earlier, she's sort of the overseer of the CRF. And so she's definitely the person that you want to, drop an email to. She's pretty understanding and easy to work with. So yeah, she's the director of student engagement.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Myra,
Thank you.
Myra went ahead and put her email in the chat, so please do contact her. Thank you. Yanina, would you like to share your question?
Yes, going back to what you all talked about, studying something that you really want to know about, which I think it was a great feedback. How do you deal with setbacks? How do you deal with stress? And how do you deal with time management between your research project and your class workload?
Okay, I'll sort of get us going on this. That's a really good question and an important question to ask, and I'm happy you raised it. Yeah, so setbacks and bumps in the road, like research is forever shifting. As more you investigate, the more that you peer deeper into what you're doing, the more your proposal sort of skews a bit, right? You're going to submit a research proposal, but you're not like locked in. Like if you start to like start to drift away from the core elements of what you originally submitted as a proposal and were approved on, there is nobody that's going to say, nope, you can't do that. No. Everybody in this at UCR and in research universities as a whole understands that research changes as you go. You may have had a particular question or thesis, and as you start to investigate further, you realize like, hey, we really can't go that way. Some professors, they spend years writing a book, right, and doing the research. We have like 1 year. So we have to shift on the fly, right? And then as far as like, how to balance, because we do have to take a full course load, right? We're full-time students, balance those classes with our research for the CRF. That's where your faculty mentor comes into play. I mean, honestly, you're not just meeting with your faculty mentor to discuss the research you're doing, but they're helping you as far as like, they're kind of like a therapist in a way, because they've been there before, quite honestly, and they understand. They've done it in grad school. They've done it. They were TAs as grad school students while also doing PhD research, right? So there's like hundreds of papers that they have to grade, but while doing research, it's like impossible to think about, but they managed it. And so these are the questions that you take to your meetings with your CRF faculty mentor, and you can lean on them and they will help you like, okay, we're going to try our best to hit these marks by this time and this time. Let's be flexible about it. And then, and by doing so, that's why we call them mentor or femtors, is because that, they will be able to guide you. That's what they're signing up for when they agree to take on this project with you. And, they're very empathetic. And they understand that, hiccups happen. We all are living our lives and it's a pandemic right now. So there's flexibility, and it's just about trusting the process, and also, not bearing everything inside and trying to just deal with it. You need to get things out and talk with people, whether that's with the faculty mentor or, mental health on campus and such. I mean, truly, it can be very stressful, but as long as you're open and honest, not try to like supersede any kind of expectations you put on yourself, and you're just, forthright with what you're doing and with the people that care about you, you're going to be okay. It's a process, and you just put one step in front of the other and you keep moving.
Yeah, I think to add to that, I'd go ahead and say do things with time. Definitely keep in mind that there are going to be roadblocks in mind, so kind of try to start the process as early as you can. I'll go ahead and share that because of COVID, I had to get IRB approval from my past school district. And they were just having lots of faculty issues. People were sick, so they weren't able to meet with me. So that definitely caused quite a few roadblocks. And unfortunately, my IRB process was kind of moved forward. And sometimes you just have no control over these things. Again, like Greg said, we're in a pandemic, things are ever changing. So sometimes, like, as mad as you want to be at yourself, you literally can't be. Because sometimes, like, things just aren't in your control. And alongside that, I think having a good support system is super important. I know, like, I talked to my supervisor, not related to CRF, but she was like, it's always good to have one person that knows what you're talking about and one person that has no clue what you're talking about. So you can get kind of different perspectives and different advice on kind of the dilemmas that you're having. So I reach out to my partner if I'm ever really stressed out with this research project, and he helps kind of like give me a non-CRF, non-research perspective. So that's always helpful. But again, like Greg mentioned also, having a good relationship with your faculty advisor. They've been through the ropes, they've done this before, and they'll also help you kind of set guidelines and set goals for yourself. And they're gonna push you, and it might be kind of terrifying at first, but yeah, they're gonna like make goals for you because they know that you're capable of reaching those goals. So yeah.
Yeah, just to mimic a bit of what Myra and Greg both shared, having that flexibility within your research is very important because so many things, unexpected things come up. And as Myra was saying, like, you kind of want to critique yourself about it, but it is important to have that separation in mind on things that you can control versus things that you can't control. And the things that you can't control, it's easier said than done, but it's best to like try not to worry so much about those since you essentially can't control them. But the things that you can control, planning ahead does help a lot. As for the time management portion of that, so something that I do to organize all of my responsibilities is I try to plan out my week ahead of time. So in the beginning of the week, I always section off a bit of time where I'm kind of figuring out what responsibilities I have to take care of during my week and to get an idea of how my actual week will look like to help me organize my time and make sure that I'm spending the efficient amount of time for each thing. So that really helps while being a student and running my research at the same time. Something that can get challenging with the Chancellor Research Fellowship is the fact that it's a pro and a con, but the fact that you kind of have say over when you're working on your own project. So for this, you really do have to hold yourself accountable to meeting the goals that you set with your faculty mentor. And as well, in addition to that, setting aside time where during that time you're only focusing on Chancellor Research Fellowship, and during that time you're focused on your project and getting those things done, as well as separating that other time that you want to dedicate to maybe classes or organizations. It's really important for you to, well, for me, that's what's helped me really be able to manage my time.
Thank you, panelists, once again for answering that question. I definitely agree with what everyone has said, especially for me, the point about building your relationship with your faculty mentor in order to have those open lines of communication when things do get stressful, because they do. They certainly do. So thank you all. I would like to call Alina, if you would like to share your next question.
Yeah, this is related to the previous question, but I wanted to ask, so what do you do outside of your project as, because I know you mentioned like the CRF committees, so how much work or maybe like per month, per week do you normally put toward your project and then plus the extra CRF duties?
That's a good question. If I can jump in, I think as most probably know that over the summer, from when you're first offered the CRF to the end of the summer, it's full time at least. full-time hours are expected, so 40 hours a week of working on your project. And for me personally, that's when I made the most headway on my project, and was able to get through quite a bit. And since then, I would say I dedicate probably near 8 hours to my research a week. And I would add in a few hours of just CRF responsibilities. I'd say maybe 3 to 5 on average. But like I did mention, I was able to get a lot of my project done over the summer. And so that might be 8 hours a week, might be a little bit on the lesser side, depending on what your project is, how much gets done over the summer, and in previous quarters, how many roadblocks occur, which are not oftentimes not in our control, and a lot of different factors. But that's just personally my experience.
So for me, it's similar to Kelsey as well. So I do make sure to section off at least 6 hours, but that's like the time set aside. But in addition to that, because I am, my study does involve actively running a study, I am constantly checking on this study to make sure that everything is going well. So because it's a lot of kind of checking or responding to emails, a lot of the work is sort of dispersed throughout my week. So probably overall maybe 8 hours, but actually set aside where I'm just focused on it would be probably about 6. And in addition to the other commitments, they are pretty spread out as well. I would, so with CRF, there are meetings that we are invited to attend, but the Chancellor Research Fellowship Office is very flexible and understanding as well if you're not able to make these meetings. And if you are, then it works wonderfully. So I would say that what Kelsey said was pretty accurate, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with everything that has been said already. I mean, for me personally, I got a lot of the stuff, as much stuff as I could get done during summer. I work on the weekends when I can. If it's like, a busy week with just my other classes, then I'll just put the project away for a little bit. I don't really, I try not to let the stress build up on me, to be quite honest with you. I like, as mentioned earlier, you're expected to work during the summer on your research, and it's supposed to be 40 hours a week, but you're not filling out a time card, or you're not punching the clock. I mean, it's really just about trust and knowing that you're going to get as much possibly done during the summer. Really take advantage of that time. I think that's when you can put a dent in things. And then after that, it's sort of just, for me, it's a lot of writing. So it's like draft after draft. And I've really written like a paragraph or two, like so many times, but it's just a pro tip. Don't ever throw away any draft. Keep everything you do. Just keep it all. It doesn't matter if you think it was foolish and silly, you just keep it. Anyhow, yeah, I don't have like okay, Saturday, I'm going to work from 12 to 5 and I'm not going to allow myself to be disturbed. That's not the way that I work. A part of this process is learning what kind of groove you fit into, like what works for you, in my opinion. So I don't think there's like a one size fits all approach to this. It's just about you discovering yourself and how you do research. I really truly feel that way.
I do want to add really quick that the amount of hours that you or the amount of work that is expected for you to put into your research does vary depending on the week and depending on the process within your research that you are experiencing during that time. So for example, when I was filling out the IRB application, there were moments where when I was creating the application, I was putting a lot of time during into that application, but when I was waiting to hear back, I wasn't putting much hours into my research just because it was mainly waiting or trying to figure out other questions during that time. So it didn't take as much time. And then as well as during the data collection process, there are certain weeks where I will receive multiple participants. And then during that week, I need to put in more hours to make sure these participants are know what they're doing and are getting all the materials that they need. But there will be other weeks where I don't get as many participants. So it really does change depending on the stage of your research project. And yeah, so it's important to kind of you adjust how much time that you.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you all so much. Thank you, panelists, again for joining and sharing your experience, sharing your advice. And thank you to all of the participants for joining us and asking such great questions. We will go ahead and conclude the panel here, but we look forward to hearing from you and hopefully seeing you apply to the CRF. And we will be around for more events. Please stay on the lookout for any upcoming events that may be advertised. Oh, yes. I will go ahead and put my contact information.
Yeah, while you're doing that, there was a question in the chat, is like, how do we apply? I didn't really see like a link to upload anything. I would just keep checking back. I came across that just right now myself. I don't see anything that just, links to submit things. I think right now is very preliminary. They understand that this is very informative and we're trying to process and digest a lot of information. So continue to partner with your professors and feel free to email me if you don't see anything pop up, or if you just, want, I'll write your name down off to the side and then I'll hit up Gladys and say, hey, they're asking how to upload this stuff. So we'll get that answer to you. All right. So contact information is there. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you all. Have a great rest of your week. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Bye, everyone.